This video will go over 5.2b lesson. You will need pages 22 and 23 for now for part 1 of this lesson. So here are the steps for modeling percent problems when given a percent. So this is only when you're given a percent. First, you want to write the percent as a fraction in simplest form. Remember, the percent means out of 100. Then you make a bar model to represent the fraction or the percent that you had originally. Then figure out how much each piece of the bar model represents based on the given information, and then solve. So first you're going to take 25% and write it as a fraction, so 25 out of 100, and that reduces to 1/4. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your bar model and break it into 4 total parts. So the denominator tells you that you want a total of 4 parts. So sketch your bar model, which is a rectangle, and you're going to break it into 4 parts. Then the total value of that rectangle is 180. Okay, so I'm going to label the total value of the bar model 180. Now I need to figure out what is the value of each piece or each part in your bar model. So it means I need to take 180 and divide it by 4. So 180 divided by 4 is 45. So now we're going to label each part as 45, because that's the value of each part. Okay, so since we're looking at what 25% would be, and that's 1/4, then you only want to look at 1 out of the 4 parts. Okay, so that 1 out of 4 parts would be your 25% that you're looking at. So that would be just 45. Okay, so you would answer that 45 is 25% of 180. Okay, so your answer is 45. Number 2, 15 is 20% of what number? Okay, so we're looking at 20%, so you take 20% and you write that as a fraction, so it'd be 20 out of 100, which reduces to 1/5. So it means that in your bar model, you're going to create a total of 5 parts. So you want to break your bar model into 5 total parts. So sketch your bar model, and we're going to divide it into 5 parts. So there are 5 parts there. And then we're trying to figure out of what it is. So we don't know the total value of your bar model. So that's what's missing. Okay. So 15 is 20% of the total. So you're told that 15 is 1/5 of the bar model. That's what that's saying. So 15 is 1/5 of the total. So that means one of these parts would be 15. And that's the 20%. Okay, we want to know what is the total value. So the whole value of your bar model. So to figure out that total value, if we know one piece is 15 and these are all equal, that means each of these pieces are also 15. Okay, so to get the total, you could add 15 plus 15 plus 15 plus 15 plus 15. Or you could take 15 times 5, which is 75. Okay, so that means that your answer would be 75. So you could state that 15 is 20% of 75, which is what we were finding. Okay, next, number 3, it says find 60% of 180. So now we do know the total is 180, the total value of our bar model. So take 60% and write it as a fraction out of 100. So that reduces to, if I divide the top and the bottom by 20, I get 3/5. So that means that I'm going to take my bar model and create a total of 5 parts. Okay, so draw your bar model, and I'm going to break it into 5 equal parts. So the total value of our bar model is 180. And we want to know what the value of each individual parts would be. So what you need to do is take 180 and divide it by 5 to get the value of each part. So you get 36, so the value of each part would be 36. Okay, so you want to find 60%, which would be 3/5. Okay, so 3 of these fifths. What's the value of those 3/5? Okay, so those 3/5, you could take 36 plus 36 plus 36. Or you could take 3 times 36 to get your answer. And you get 108. So that means that 60% of 180 is 108. Okay, number 4, 30 is 25% of what number? So we're missing the total, this case. Okay, so 25%, you want to write that as a fraction, so 25 out of 100, which reduces to 1/4. Then sketch your bar model. And since it's 1/4, that means you have a total of 4 parts in the bar model. So break your bar model into 4 parts. And then you're trying to figure out the total. We don't know the total value of your bar model. Okay, and we're told that 30 is 25% of it. So 25% of this bar model. So only 1/4 of this bar model is 30. Okay, so if that 1/4 is 30 and we know all these parts are the same, that means the value of each of these parts would also be 30. And now to get the total, we can add 30 plus 30 plus 30 plus 30, or you could take 4 times 30, and that would give you 120. So that means that 30 is 25% of 120, which 120 is what we're trying to find. Okay, number 5, you want to find 20% of 320. So we know the total is 320. We want to find 20% of it. So 20% would be 20 out of 100, which reduces to 1/5. So sketch your bar model. And we're going to break this up into a total of 5 parts. Okay, so you have 5 total parts. And we know the total value of this bar model is 320. And we want to know what 20% of it is. So 20% is 1/5 of our bar model. So here's 1/5 of our bar model. We want to know what that is. So first, to figure out what that is, we need to know the value of each part. So take 320 and divide it by 5 to get the value of each part. So 320 divided by 5. So we get 64. So the value of each piece is 64. So label each part, and then we're only looking for 1/5 of our bar model. So that would just be 64. So that means that 64 is 20% of 320. And we're asked to find 64. Okay, number 6, find 40% of 80. So we know 80 is the total. So 40%, we want to write that as a fraction. That would be 40 out of 100, which reduces to, we divide by 20, we get 2/5. So that means we're going to take our bar model and break it into 5 total parts. So sketch your bar model and break it up into fifths. And then the total value of your bar model would be 80. So we can figure out the value of each part by dividing 80 by 5. And that would give us 16. So the value of each part is 16. So we label each part with 16. And we're looking for 40%. So 40% would be 2 of these parts, 2 out of the 5 parts. So I'm going to highlight those 2 out of the 5 parts because that's my 40% that we're looking for. So since I only need to know what those 2 parts equal, so I add 16 plus 16, or I can multiply 2 times 16, and I get 32. So that means that 32 is 40% of 80. Okay, number 7. 12 is 10% of what number? So we don't know the total value of our bar model. That's what we're trying to figure out. So 10% would be 10 out of 100, which reduces to 1/10. So we're going to break our bar model into tenths. Okay, so you're going to take a bar model, and I would break it into fifths first, and then break each part in half, so I have 10 parts. Okay, so we don't know the total value of our bar model this time. So the total is missing. We only know that 12 is 10%. So 12 is 1/10 of our bar model. So that means one of these pieces equals 12. That would be the 10%. So if we know that one piece is 12, we want to know the value of the entire bar model. So since each of these parts are equal, that means each of these parts is also 12. Okay, so to get the total, you can add 12 plus 12 plus 12 each time, or you can just take 12 times 10, and that would equal 120. So that means that 12 is 10% of 120. Okay, so in the next video, we will go over the next part of lesson 5.2b.